Hey guys, Julie here, and in this video I'm finally going to test out these children watercolors that I got from South Korea. And I first featured this in my Korean art supply haul, so I'll link that down below if you're interested. They come in these really cool plastic tubes. I just found them so interesting. When I first saw them, I honestly had no idea what they were, but for one of my summer camps that I taught, since I did teach English in Korea, they actually use these watercolors, so that's when I found out what they actually were. And I just thought they were so cute. Every time I look at them, they remind me of my students. I'm not quite sure what cartoon show this is. It might be a Korean show. If anyone has any idea, let me know down below. You could hear the birds in the background because they are flying around, so you might hear them flapping their cute little wings. Of course, we're gonna start off by swatching these out. I have my coffee here. It's a really beautiful day, by the way, which is not as common here in Vancouver, or as the locals call it, Raincouver. We'll start off with swatching them out, and this is a page that I sketched out. I used a reference. I was gonna paint it, but I had no idea what I was doing, so I'm just gonna swatch over this because I have no need for this page anymore. Might as well put it to some use. And you know what? My desk is a mess. This is the behind the scenes. I just pushed everything to the side so that this area here is clear. You know, I tried, okay? I tried. And I actually made this in a ceramics class. I don't love it. I was not expecting the clay to oxidize. It caused these little specks. I thought it would be plain white. So I don't really like that it's speckled like this, but you know, it'll come in handy in this case because there are 12 colors and 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't know. I'll find some areas to mix the colors in just to test them out. We'll figure it out. Okay, I wonder how this will be if I don't shake it first. I'm so sorry if the birds are distracting. I'm used to them because they live in my room, so I don't hear them half the time. Normally I move them to the other room. Sometimes I'm lazy so I don't, but today, since they're flying around, I don't want to put them back in their cage. They're so happy. Okay, so I want to see, because I haven't touched these in a really long time, I want to see if the binder and pigment are separated at all. Normally I shake them first, but let's see. Right out of the tube. Yep, there you go. Can you see that? There's some separation there. Ooh! Paprika flew on my head just now. But I look horrendous, so I'm not gonna show you. Okay, so yeah, binder and pigment separates. Okay, so here are all the colors, and because they're watercolors, of course you just need a tiny little dab. Again, sorry about the birds. Some of the colors did separate, the pigment and the binder, even after I shook it. This one here did. These two, for some reason, came out really watery. This one here is also separating, but I'm sure when we add water it'll be fine. The rest of them seem like pretty good consistency, so you know, I guess we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Hello, Julie Rocks here. I'm an amateur artist here on YouTube, and I post art-related videos and talk about the highs and lows of learning art as an adult. Today, we're playing with these interesting plastic tube paints from South Korea. These are children's paints, as you can tell by the box, and also by the tubes themselves. While working in Korea, I hadn't actually come across paints packaged like this designed for adults. From my experience, they've all been for children, but correct me if I'm wrong. I saw a similar style of paints at a thrift store, but they were from Japan. So maybe they're common in different parts of Asia. But here in Canada, I've never seen tube paints that look like this. For context, I worked as an English teacher in Korea, so my classroom was full of random supplies. When I first came across these paints, I had no idea what they were. It wasn't until I led an English summer camp that I found out. I was teaching my students about Morocco, which was actually a lesson for myself as well, since I didn't know much about the country before I prepared for this lesson. And I had my students make and sign postcards that were on theme for Morocco, among trivia, videos, and other group activities. But for the postcards specifically, I requested dry watercolor palettes that were ready to use. I even attached photos and links and made sure everything was within budget. I actually ended up receiving from the school I worked at similar paints to the ones in this video, along with some plastic palettes to pour the paint into. Listen, when you're dealing with 20 plus students per class and teaching multiple classes a day with only 10 minutes in between, you really don't have time to wash the brushes, water cups, palettes, and prep new palettes of paint for the next batch of kids. Also, the school I worked at was super stingy, so I had to try to squeeze every single drop of paint as I could, since I was only given a few sets for 120 students in total. It was a panicked mess. Luckily, I incorporated short videos into some of my camp segments. Thank you, YouTube editing skills. So I teach, play a video, and then panic while trying to set up paint palettes. Anyways, that's a bit of a tangent, but watching the students make their postcards was so adorable, and seeing them work with the paints just made me want to paint alongside them. Of course, I didn't because I was busy teaching and guiding. I was actually really impressed with the quality of these children's paints, although it was hard to fully judge since I never used them myself. I was just watching my students use them. Cue my Daiso in Korea haul, where I picked up a massive set of these tube paints. The set I picked up from Daiso had 26 paint tubes, and it was actually about the same price as the 12-piece set featured in this video. The set in this video, I actually found it in some random corner shop. They sold gardening supplies, and I just randomly found these paints. When I first used the set from Daiso, I was disappointed. The colors weren't pigmented, the binder to pigment ratio was lacking, and there was tons of separation going on. I really believe that I misremembered how great the paints were while seeing my students use them. Picking up this children's watercolor set was a very last-minute decision. I had my bags packed and ready to go back home to Canada and realized I had a tiny bit of space in one of my suitcases. When arriving to Korea 2 years prior, I thought the best souvenir I could bring back for myself was a set of professional grade watercolors, since I've yet to own one. But as time went on, I decided against it. I still have tons of paint left in my Mei Liang Pretty Excellent set, aka my pride and joy, and thought it would be less wasteful to use it up before treating myself to a professional set. I wanted to earn it, okay? I also still wanted to bring back some kind of an art-related souvenir. And when I came across these paints, I realized they were the ideal watercolor souvenir that I could both use and cherish, especially since they bring back vivid memories of that summer camp I taught and teaching in Korea in general. The packaging is also very reminiscent of the super cute and loud packaging that Korea is known for, especially when it comes to items made for children. And unlike the Daiso set, I will use these paints and enjoy using them. I'll tell you why in a moment. Before I do, let's talk about this reference photo. Normally, I scroll through my Pinterest board looking for inspiration. It can take up to 30 minutes to find the quote-unquote perfect photo. One that looks fun to paint, one that suits my current mood, one with really cool colors. This one, however, just popped up on my homepage after opening the app, so it was super easy. I love the colors, the pose, the cool factor of the model. This reference photo is from an online shop called The Chain. And the top that they're selling is called Jimmy Flower Child High Neck Crop Top. I acknowledge that I did not do this reference photo justice. I have some criticisms of this artwork, issues with anatomy and proportions, but I absolutely love how the colors turned out. I really believe I'm ever so slowly getting better at mixing skin tones and colors in general. So for that, I'm really satisfied. But this video is about the paints, not necessarily the artwork. So let's focus on them. I'm going to safely guess that these paints are nothing above student grade. Student grade paints are all I have experience with, although by the sound of some artist reviews, there are a lot of paints out there that work like professional grade paints, but just lack the pigment and color fast information that professional paints are known to have. In terms of the painting experience, I feel confident in my experience with Mei Liang watercolors, considering they have raving reviews among both professional and amateur artists. So I'm confident in my experience with this set to review other student grade paints. Also, I have dabbled a little bit before I settled on the Mei Liang set. Just know that this review is not done by a professional artist, as you could tell, and not someone who has worked closely with artist grade watercolors. I also work out of pans. I don't normally gravitate towards tubed watercolors because of convenience and portability reasons. I'm a lazy gal, okay? I don't like to work too hard. Disclaimers aside, these children's paints are gorgeous. The colors are bright and vivid, they don't muddy when mixed, they blend beautifully, and they did everything I asked of them. I kid you not, midway through painting this, I totally forgot they were children's paints. I felt like I was working with my Mei Liang set. That's how familiar the experience was. They layered so well, they were not chalky in the slightest. To say I'm thoroughly impressed is an understatement. These blew my expectations out of the water. They are great paints, and calling them a children's supply in terms of the connotations that come with that, being cheap and low quality, is a grave injustice. Dramatic, I know, but that's how I feel. If this is what children grew up using in Korea, I really believe we're doing something wrong here in America of the North. The Daiso haul that I posted while I was living in Korea, I actually had that planned for a while, but it took a lot of hemming and hawing to actually go through with it. The last thing I needed was more cheap and unimpressive art supplies cluttering my space and ending up in a landfill. A lot of the items I picked up, however, surprised me. Their quality was very impressive, minus the tube children's paint. So much so that I made room for some of them in my suitcase to bring back with me, even going as far as donating some of my favorite clothing to make room for them. It was pretty incredible living in a place with a comparatively, mind you, low cost of living. For context, I live in Vancouver, Canada, and we're going through this whole housing cost of living crisis. It is actually anxiety-inducing and kind of depressing. And I know a lot of y'all in larger cities can relate. So to be in a place where cheap didn't necessarily default to being low quality, and considering I was actually able to save some money while making Canadian minimum wage, was pretty good, all things considered. I mean, ideally, I would have been paid more, but you know. I was provided housing, so that obviously was a huge factor in being able to save, while also not missing out on shopping trips and cool experiences. And of course, everywhere in Korea works a little bit differently. But one of my friends who was not a teacher, he was actually a software designer, I believe. He moved into my building and his rent was about 350,000 Korean won, which is about 350 Canadian dollars, something like that. Maybe a tiny bit more for a studio that was in the same building that I lived in the city center. But his apartment was actually 1.5 times larger than mine. So if you could get away with $350 in rent for a studio, amazing. Of course, again, everywhere is different. But even if I did have to pay my own rent, I feel like I would still be able to save a little bit. And on top of that, I really got to fully embrace life, and I was able to walk out with some money on the side, knowing I would come home and have to look for work again. So it was a nice cushion for sure. To bring this back around, if these are the kinds of art supplies that children in Korea grew up with, I'd imagine that creating art and embracing creativity in general might have been more of a streamlined process. I guess you can argue that children don't really care or notice quality differences, but maybe they do. Maybe they grew up hating coloring because their colored pencils were so waxy, it was hard to lay flat color down. Maybe they hated using markers because they were always dry and streaky. Maybe an accumulation of these experiences turned them off of art when they were young. I really do wonder if these early experiences make a difference. So for those of you who fell in love with making art at a young age, let me know how it was for you working with different quality of supplies. Overall, these paints are amazing. I've used more expensive student grade paint sets that were half the quality of these, and for reference, these were, I believe, around $5 Canadian. I'm glad to have decided to pick them up last minute, and I love that I have a set of paints that bring me back to a time and place that means so much to me. They bring back memories of my time in Korea, and I couldn't help but smile while I was using them. Well, that's all I have for you today. I really hope you enjoyed this video. This will hopefully be the last time I ask you, since my video about how creativity and anxiety don't really work well together did very well. Thank you so much. So I'm only about 50 watch hours away from rejoining the YouTube Partner Program. So freaking close! My channel is at the final stretch, so for the last time, please watch some of my other videos that interest you, choose a playlist that you find will be entertaining, and sit back and enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I really, truly love making these videos. It is getting a bit busy on my end. There's a lot going on, a lot of changes, but I'm doing my best to be as consistent as possible and will continue to do so. I really, truly appreciate all of you. It means the world to me that you take the time out of your day to watch my videos. I know there are people out there who watch a lot of them but don't comment. I'm the same on a lot of the channels I follow, but feel free to come out and say hi. Tell me about your experience with art, whether you're a fellow amateur or a professional, or maybe not an artist at all. I'd love to virtually meet you and say hello, so don't be shy. Come out and say hello. Thanks again, and until next time, stay creative. Peace. Hey guys, it's the next morning. I'm looking at this and I'm gonna pick at it a little. First of all, her head's too big. Not her hair, we all love big hair, but her head. Her head is too big. I have big head syndrome, that's what I call it, when I draw. So a lot of the people I draw end up having big heads. And that's always in the back of my mind. So I try to make the head smaller than I think it should be, but it wasn't very successful on this page. I think it's because when I'm sitting drawing like this, it looks kind of normal. And then when I hold it up, I'm like, oh, The anatomy is a bit wonky. This mirror here, I think it should be wider. The proportions of the car is a little bit awkward, but I do like how I painted the metal here. I really love this red color. And in the reference photo, the background was very much blue, but I added a bit of green, and I really like how this gradient turned out, and I love this teal color here. I really like how I painted her skin tones. You guys know I've been struggling with skin tones. But ever since I decided to take on the 100 heads challenge, or my variation of it, I feel like I'm slowly getting better. I really like how sun-kissed her skin looks. Although I know I could improve on some of the shadows and highlights. So there is a lot to improve. Overall, as a standalone piece, I don't love it. I think she looks a little awkward and stiff. My proportions are off, but I do really love the colors. So I like elements of it, and for the elements that I don't like, you know, it's always a learning experience, isn't it? I also love that her hair is so dark, and it's like a nice contrast to the rest of the painting. And I also like how her shirt turned out. Obviously, I kind of copied the pattern from the reference photo, but I do like how this pattern turned out. I normally don't attempt with patterns, I just use solid colors, so yeah. Overall, these paints were amazing. I'm very pleasantly surprised with how they work, how pigmented they are, how well they blended together. Very impressed, especially since these watercolors are made for children. I really wish the watercolors here in North America made for children were made with the same level of care and quality as these ones here, because I don't know if kids can tell the difference, but maybe growing up with some like beautiful, gorgeous paints would really catapult them into art. I don't know. I don't know if it works that way since I started learning when I was 20, but y'all let me know. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay creative. Peace.